an advanced trial advocacy class dealing with municipal court trials. And I really want to take it from the top. And one of the things that you and I had talked about this, and I mentioned this the other day among some colleagues that we had at a big hearing, was why are we doing this? Why, when you're going to have to try a case in municipal court, it's so unusual given the volume of cases that come up versus the outcomes, which are almost always 99% done by way of negotiated plea agreements. What would you say the main reason from off the top of your head is that these cases wind up being tried?
Usually there's just no downside risk to trials for many, if not most of these cases. I always have that discussion with my clients up front. Unless the evidence is absolutely overwhelming, I just believe it's time to take your shot and to go to trial, because a lot of times you just never know what's going to happen. And I would say half the time, prosecutors make mistakes that you can capitalize on. And these are things that are completely unanticipated and unknown, and you'd never find out about unless you actually attempted to fight the case.
Well, we'll be discussing that momentarily in great detail. I did a little survey. You saw me in court yesterday in Ocean County, right?
I did.
Right, I took a survey. The number one thing, I don't have it in your lesson plan, but it says the client is being unreasonable. And you do run into clients sometimes that they just insist on having a trial. You can't change your mind. There's nothing to dissuade them. It is not in their best interest. But at the end of the day, your client gets to make the final call, right, Johnny?
Well, that's true, but all of my clients are reasonable and they all tell me the truth.
I have not had that experience. Sometimes you run into prosecutors that are unreasonable too. You have a perfectly good outcome that you're suggesting, and they're hard-headed about it. You run into that. Sometimes they get a rude surprise during the course of the trial. Just the one you just mentioned. The defendant has nothing to lose by taking the case to trial. Let's say you're facing you got a third offense DWI guy. All right, what is the downside on trying that? They're not offering anything. There's nothing on the table, so why not try it?
Well, there is a range of jail. I mean, it's a minimum of 180 days and a maximum of 6 months, right?
No, yeah, that's one way of looking at it. But I mean, you really have nothing to lose under those circumstances if there's nothing on the table. Every once in a while, you'll have a case where your guy's actually factually innocent. That doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. I had one of those in Superior Court the other day, as a matter of fact. State has fatal weaknesses in the case that they don't know about because you haven't told them and you're not going to. Defendant can assert a complete affirmative defense. We're going to have to talk about that. Think about State versus Romano, Johnny. I want to have you talk about that one, okay? And sometimes you get objections from victims or witnesses. But usually it's victims that they're insisting on the case being tried. They won't engage in any type of plea bargaining. And of course, they don't have any legal authority to stop it. The prosecutor gets to make the final call. But many prosecutors are just too hesitant to go against the wishes of victims in cases. Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, they're worried about complaints to the powers that be. Keep in mind, these prosecutors, generally speaking, only get a 1-year term. There's no tenure. And sometimes if victims are very loud and annoying and know the right people, that can affect your prosecutor's job.
Well, the reason I put this in here, Johnny, because I think that when you're putting these cases, you're going to try these matters. I think you've really got to have a strategy in your back of your mind, and you really got to ask yourself, why am I trying this case in the first place? Why am I doing this? Okay. And it's not that the effort that you put in you always put in the same level of effort, just as a matter of professionalism. But what I'm concerned about is what are the tactics and strategies you're going to adopt to try to meet the needs of your client and meet the needs of the situation. So I think an analysis of why you're trying the case in the first place, should guide you in terms of how you're going to handle these things. I'm just curious to see if you agree with me on that.
Look, there are some cases that do require much more preparation, particularly those cases where you have an affirmative defense or you have an expert witness. But most of the times you're playing for the fumble. You're playing for the prosecutor's error.